What's going on, everybody? C4 here, and today we're continuing with our little bit of a rewind and reaction to some of my older videos, especially in terms of looking at prospects. And today we're going to be looking at my top 5 player rankings for the 2014 NFL Draft, taking a trip down memory lane. I did videos for every single position. What I did was I gave a player that I liked as well as their ideal pro comparison and where I thought they should go in the draft. And you know, I just quickly browsed over a couple of them. Some of these are gonna be surprises to me. Like I said, I'll edit it so you don't see all the me trying to sort through everything. Couple hot takes. You know, like I said, this whole point of these kind of rewinds is to look like if I'm a smartass or a dumbass, and there's a little bit of both. And by a little bit, I mean a lot. So we are gonna just jump right into it. We're gonna do all the positions. So we'll even go through offensive line because maybe some of these guys have turned into all pro that I really like. So we're starting first with the quarterback spot. And like I said, a lot of this, I'm just going to keep the audio off because we have the picture there. You don't need to hear me bumbling around. So for my sleeper from the draft, I actually had it as Jimmy Garoppolo, and I compared him to Tony Romo. I'm pretty sure they went to the same university, but either way, we all know now with Jimmy G eventually moving on from the New England Patriots, where he looked promising. Now he's undefeated, 5-0, and you know, will go into next season as an undefeated quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. Jimmy G was one heck of a shout from C4 here in terms of being an absolute baller. So my 5th quarterback, I actually had it as Taj Boyd from Clemson. Taj Boyd was actually really good at Clemson, and a lot of people still kind of consider Taj Boyd maybe better than Deshaun Watson while they have both been at Clemson. And comparing Taj Boyd to Donovan McNabb, I could not be any more out. Taj Boyd pretty much got bounced from the league, never really had the arm talent, and always had bad decision making. So you know, in terms of making a fairly decent take, it wasn't so hot. Moving to my 4th quarterback, we had it as Derek Carr, who I compared to Matt Stafford. I was super high on Derek Carr. I thought he should be a first-round talent quarterback. And when the draft actually happened, I remember the Houston Texans needed a quarterback, and it was pretty much they came out and said, we're not drafting Derek Carr because of the history with David, as you can see there. And the young YouTubes clearly butchered his name. I think it's D-E-R-E-K. But compared to Matt Stafford, I gave him great plays. I didn't put him at the higher than 4. Just because I thought the other quarterbacks all were going to be great. And obviously, we all know that not the other quarterbacks we're probably going to talk about weren't great. But I think the fact that I was so high on Derek Carr and thought he absolutely should have been in conversation for QB1, gives a little bit more clout. And comparing to Matt Stafford, who's the highest paid quarterback in football, that's not too shabby there. Moving to our QB3, as we search around here, we went with Teddy Bridgewater, who I compared to Geno Smith, which is not so hot. I mean, Geno Smith, I was really high on him. I can't find those videos. I must have deleted them to save me the embarrassment. There was a point in time where I thought Geno Smith was going to be the next game changer at the NFL. I had him mocked to the Philadelphia Eagles at one point. So throwing Teddy Bridgewater there, I always kind of questioned Teddy Bridgewater's arm talent. And still now, there was a lot of uncertainty with Teddy Bridgewater. You look at Derek Carr, he was a fringe MVP candidate before he broke his leg. Teddy Bridgewater, on the other hand, was always like, you know what, is he not the kind of guy there in Minnesota that's going to be able to take over the starting QB gig? Obviously not when they gave up pretty big assets to trade for Sam Bradford. The jury's still on Teddy Bridgewater. His career still has a lot of football left. It's good to see him back on the field, but, having him in there, it's not the best spot. Moving to QB2, we went with Blake Bortles and his insanely hot girlfriend, who we compared to Ben Roethlisberger. That was a very common player comparison. And Blake Bortles, again, mystified. He had 35 touchdowns one year. Looks like, that potential has been carrying over through the down years. And even this season, man, he's leading the Jacksonville Jaguars into the playoffs. Probably by the time this video comes out, we might know if they do win or not. But Blake Bortles is really inconsistent. But I have this gut feeling that Blake Bortles could play himself into a Joe Flacco type deal, where if somehow, some way, the Jacksonville Jaguars can ride that run game and defense to even just a Super Bowl appearance, you might have to, retain Blake Bortles because, he's going to be a guy that can take you to the Super Bowl, and he's, under 25 or around that 25, 26 range. It's going to be a tough spot, but having Blake Bortles at number 2 definitely wasn't my hottest of predictions. And rounding out with the quarterbacks, I compared Johnny Manziel to Brett Favre. Not my finest comparison. I was a big fan of Johnny Manziel, but now more and more I see it, I realize that Mike Evans kind of made Johnny Manziel more than Johnny Manziel made Mike Evans on that offense. I thought both those guys are going to be incredibly prolific. Johnny Manziel, you all know, he likes the drugs. We don't really know what Johnny Manziel, he's still one of those guys, there's definitely a huge segment of fans that hope he can eventually turn around and become, what he was supposed to be from college. But now he's up here in the CFL. Hey, I might be able to get to watch him play someday. But compared to Brett Favre, I mean, that's still kind of their play style. It's kind of similar, the gunslinger, the reckless abandon. But that definitely was not the hottest of player comparisons. And overall, I mean, it was a pretty weak quarterback class, at least when we talk about the guys I mentioned. At least I mentioned really Jimmy G and Derek Carr, who were, kind of the big two, and then you got Blake Bortles, who had one big year. So at least I didn't like completely sleep on anybody, but obviously, even though I was really high on Derek Carr, it kind of gets downgraded when I compare Johnny Manziel to a Hall of Famer like Brett Favre. So that's the quarterbacks. Let's jump into the running backs. All right, so here we are at the running backs, and we're starting with our sleeper. I had Lachey C. Strong from Baylor. I compared him to Marco Murray. We're not even going to dwell on that. That was completely off. For my number 5 running back, I had put Mr. Jeremy Hill, who, he's been serviceable. I compared him to Steven Jackson. That's obviously a lot of the expectation. A lot of these comps are probably on the more extreme side. But Jeremy Hill has definitely carved out decent role, about to probably hit free agency for the Bengals, but he'll probably land a gig, I would assume, to potentially start in 2018. So, I always thought Jeremy Hill was a fairly underrated power back when he was coming out of LSU, but still comparing him to Steven Jackson, who's definitely one of the most underrated running backs of all time. A little too extreme. Running back 4 with Kadeem Carey from Arizona. I compared him to Maurice Jones, who, like I said, these player comps, I got better. I got more realistic as the years go on. Don't think my 2014 comps are going to carry over. But Kadeem Carey, again, he's been serviceable. I actually think the Philadelphia Eagles are trying to sign him to a futures deal, but he spent some time with the Chicago Bears, and he was, serviceable. Definitely not Maurice Jones-Drew caliber, but again, like I said, I was trying to get I'm not going to say I was trying to get the clicks, but I was trying to make it simple, make just a broad, like, okay, he's built like MJD, and if he pans out, this is who he's going to be, not like a rookie comparison or anything like that. Running back 3, we went with Bishop Sankey, who was at the Washington Huskies. I compared him to Giovanni Bernard. Not so hot either. I mean, Giovanni Bernard, Sankey never caught on. Let's put it this way. Sankey was one of the most mystifying running backs in fantasy football terms. You remember when he was the Tennessee Titans running back, everyone thought he was going to get the starting gig as a rookie. He was probably the most overdrafted player that year. And, yeah, another bad player comp. Not my hottest of years, but then again, I can only pick what the draft class gives me. Running back 2. Or was this 3 or 2? I lost count. We'll find out soon because I just remember the number 1 is. We had Trey Mason, and we compared him to Ray Rice. And I guess the only thing Trey Mason had that one really good year with the Rams, and then he kind of went insane, had the off-field issues, and fell away from the league. And that's, that was a great comp because it's very similar to Ray Rice, so he fell in that kind of shoes. Trey Mason was actually my number 2 running back this year. He was great for Auburn. And my number 1 running back was Carlos Hyde, and I compared him to LeGarrette Blount. So the comp sucks, but having Carlos Hyde as my top running back, he was almost consensus. There's a couple people that had Trey Mason ahead of him, but for me, Carlos Hyde was always really good. I think he's really slept on for the 49ers. I know right now when you look at the offseason currently, they're like, oh yeah, the Niners are going to move on from Carlos Hyde, look for someone else running back. Carlos Hyde, even with Jimmy G, he is like the best weapon on that offense. I think with the Niners, where they're so stricken with a lack of explosive weapons, you have to re-sign Carlos Hyde. Running back contracts are pretty damn affordable. I don't think Carlos Hyde's going to demand a king's ransom. So really the only positive from this, he's definitely not LeGarrette Blount, is that I had clearly the best running, well, not clearly, but the best running back for my top 5 at number 1 was definitely the best running back of the group. So that's running backs. Let's move on to wide receivers. All right, here at the wide receivers, this is where things get a little wonky. So I recorded all of these rankings before the combine, so they changed, and I found a little bit later I did like an updated revised rating, and it looked a little bit smarter, but I figured, you want to see me look dumb at some point in this video. So here we go. So for the wide receiver spot, for my sleeper, I had Brandon Coleman. I compared him to Harold Carmichael. Brandon Coleman actually has been fairly serviceable, kind of like a gimmicky wide receiver for the Saints. I definitely think for a sleeper, that was definitely a good call, but nowhere near the lines of Harold Carmichael. That was more just of a size comp. Harold Carmichael is one of the greatest wide receivers in the history of the Philadelphia Eagles. At wide receiver number 5, we went with Jordan Matthews. We compared to Michael Floyd. That's a pretty dead on comp. So I'll definitely, hey, there we go, 1 for 1. That's probably the only comp that I've actually had that's somewhat realistically true. Luckily enough, that year, Jordan Matthews got drafted by my Philadelphia Eagles in the 2nd round. For running wide receiver number 4, we had Marquise Lee, and I compared him to Victor Cruz. Again, not that bad of a comp. Marquise Lee finally, it seems like over the last year or so for the Jacksonville Jaguars, has put it together. And Victor Cruz in his prime with the Giants was pretty damn serviceable. Both these guys, slot-type wide receivers. I think Marquise Lee might play a little bit more outside than slot. But, close comp, not bad. I'm doing a little bit better on the wide receivers, but when you see who I left off the list, it'll make a little bit more sense that I probably could have done a better job. So going to wide receiver number 3 from the draft, we had Kelvin Benjamin. I compared him to Demaryius Thomas. Not the best of comp, where Demaryius Thomas was big-bodied like Kelvin Benjamin, but Demaryius Thomas is much faster. I'm going to have Kelvin at number 3. I will take that because a lot of people slept on Kelvin Benjamin, especially after he didn't test particularly well at the combine. Like, oh, maybe he'll transition to tight end, this or that. But for the most part, Kelvin Benjamin has been a very productive wide receiver in the NFL. So having a wide receiver 3 is not bad. Going to wide receiver 2, we have my boy Mike Evans. I compared him to Vincent Jackson. I guess I'm wrong. in terms of like Mike Evans superseding. I mean, maybe in prime, Vincent Jackson with maybe the Chargers could probably draw a little bit of comparisons to Mike Evans, but I think Mike Evans, all in all, has probably had a better career and will have a better career than what Vincent Jackson did. Vincent Jackson was very, very serviceable, but that's definitely a fairly decent comp, I would say. Both these guys, big body wide receivers that excel at the jump ball. And at wide receiver number 1, we had Sammy Watkins. I compared Sammy Watkins to a combination of Torrey Smith and Percy Harvin. And yeah, kind of like that, you know, not the greatest of comp, but having Sammy Watkins at wide receiver 1, that was kind of popular at the time. And you maybe ask yourself, where's Odell? Well, when I did the post-combine grades, I had Odell as my 3rd wide receiver, so I got a little bit of clout there. I had Sammy Watkins at 1, Mike Evans at... No, I had Mike Evans at 1, Sammy Watkins at 2, Odell at 3, Marquise Lee at 4, and Jordan Matthews at 5. Those stayed the same because I remember everyone saw Kelvin Benjamin and kind of downgraded him, even though I originally had him fairly high. But yeah, no Odell on the list. I completely whiffed on Odell. You know, maybe I hate him. I hate his guts anyway. So glad he's not on my damn list. But not the best player comps there for Sammy Watkins. What was I thinking? You know what? This is going on a little bit long, so we'll skip the guards unless there's something really, really noteworthy. I'll go double check it, and then we'll just stick with maybe the prime positions on the defensive side of the ball. All right, so center and guards were anything special, but just quickly looking here, just as the text, I wrote it all out. For my tight ends, I had Arthur Lynch. I don't even know where he went, of Georgia. 4th, I had C.J. Fedorowicz, who's actually been fairly serviceable to Texas. I compared him to Heath Miller. 3rd round, we had Jason Mara from Texas Tech. I compared him to Aaron Hernandez. Rest in peace. 2nd, I had Austin Sfair-Jacobs. I compared him to Mercedes Lewis. He's actually starting to catch on a little bit. And number 1, I had Eric Ebron. I compared him to Vernon Davis. You know, Eric Ebron was incredibly overhyped. Probably hasn't lived at that expectation yet. He's kind of one of those guys, very much in the mold of Zach Ertz with the Eagles. Lions fans are still constantly waiting for this breakout year. Looking at tackle, we had Cyrus Kwanjo at 5, Tanya Richardson at 4, Taylor Lewan at 3, reminded me of Jake Long. Lewan's probably the best tackle of the bunch. Number 2, we had Greg Robinson, reminded me of Anthony Davis on the Niners. Greg Robinson has been, you know, definitely nothing short of a bust, but I still didn't have at number 1. I went with Jake Matthews at Texas A&M, compared to Joe Thomas, which is certainly a reach, but Jake Matthews, especially now in kind of his second stint with the... Was he drafted by the Falcons? It just seems like Jake Matthews is now one of the better tackles in the NFL. Probably not elite. Definitely Taylor Lewan is the best of the group, but Jake Matthews has definitely become a much more serviceable tackle. That being said, now let's look at D-tackle here real quick. I don't think there's anything crazy. Stephon Tuitt said he looked like Jason Hatcher. Rashid Hagman, I was high on him. Dontari Poe. We had Aaron Donald at 3, but I compared him to Geno Atkins. So that's, you know, Geno Atkins, all-pro. Aaron Donald, debatably the best defensive player in the NFL. And I was a lot higher on Aaron Donald than a lot of people because someone looked at his size and really, really thought he was going to go like 2nd round, 3rd round, something like that. I always thought he was a 1st round talent, but the fact that I put Timmy Jernigan, hey, Philadelphia Eagles, very happy to have Timmy Jernigan. Compared him to Glenn Dorsey, he was a bust on the Niners, but Jernigan has been a beast for the Eagles. The fact that I put, what was his name? Irish Chalk was his nickname. Lewis Nix at number 1 was definitely an oversight. Would have looked a lot better if Aaron Donald there. But Lewis Nix is, you know, I don't even think he's in the NFL anymore. But hey, I was very high on Timmy Jernigan and Aaron Donald, so that was a fairly nice. What do we got here at defensive end? Anything crazy to really look at? Coney Ely, Jackson, Jeff Coat, Trent Murphy. I mean, he's been actually pretty decent for the Washington Redskins. D Ford at 2. Jadeveon Clowney, compared Jadeveon Clowney to Julius Peppers, as you can see there in the thumbnail. And Clowney's an absolute freak, man. And has been really good. He's one of those guys, though, his numbers aren't really as good as you would expect, but he's constantly really, really high on for Pro Football Focus and stuff like that, kind of like Brandon Graham on the Eagles. For linebacker, we had Justin Jones at 5, Yawin Smallwood at 4, Chris Borland at 3. That was really, really high. Chris Borland, I remember a lot of people thought he was going to be like a mid-round pick. I was my 3rd best linebacker, was really, really productive with the 49ers until he retired. A lot of people thought he'd probably take over for Patrick Willis, and he retired. Unfortunately, they both left at very similar times. We had Shane Scov, who went undrafted out of Stanford as 2. And then we went with C.J. Mosley, number 1. He was pretty much the undisputed linebacker. Compared to Shawn Lee, both these guys are incredible playmakers. I think C.J. Mosley is definitely like a fringe top 5 linebacker in the NFL right now, if not a certified top 5 linebacker. Outside linebacker, we had Ronald Powell as a sleeper, Jeremiah Toshu at 5, Kyle Van Noy at 4, Ryan Shazier at 3. Hopefully he can come back and still finish out his career. Khalil Mack at 2. He was a beast, man. Compared him to T-Sizzle, Terrell Suggs. That's not a bad comp. And Anthony Barr at 1. Would have been nice to probably put Khalil Mack at 1, but I mean, who foreseen that the kid from Buffalo was going to be a future defensive player? And Barr has been somewhat inconsistent, but for the most part, very solid for his career with the Minnesota Vikings. At cornerback, we had Stanley Jean-Baptiste at 5 because, again, I was in love at this time with getting like the big Legion of Boom type secondary players. He didn't really do much. Bradley Roby at 4. He's been solid for the Denver Broncos. Who's at 3? Jason Verrett at 3. He's been pretty good for the Chargers. Darquise Dennard at 2. Bust. Pretty much a bust for the Cincinnati Bengals. And I went with Justin Gilbert at 1, and he has been, again, an ultimate bust for the Cleveland Browns. But Justin Gilbert was so good at that time. I compared him to Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, not a guy that wants to tackle, but a long, rangy, athletic corner. And pretty much everyone was wrong on Justin Gilbert. I don't think there's too many people at that time that thought Justin Gilbert was going to suck. And finally, at safety, we had Deion Bailey at 5. Deon Buchanan at 4. He's definitely carved out a decent role there with the Cardinals as the money backer. Calvin Pryor at 3, who I really want my Philadelphia Eagles to get. Except he definitely is bounced around, hasn't been great. Craig Lawson from LSU at number 2, comparing to Rashad Jones of the Miami Dolphins. Not my hottest pick, definitely a bust. Looked like a dumbass there. But at number 1, we went Clinton Dix, and he was definitely one of the better overall players from 2014. The 2014 draft was, let's be honest, not the best of drafts. It was kind of tough, and you could look stupid on a lot of picks looking back in hindsight. But I think overall, not, I looked dumb in some, I looked smart in others. But that was my 2014 draft rewind. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comment section below. If you want to see me do it, I have my 2015, 2016, and obviously we can make a quick look back at my 2017 player rankings and kind of see where we're at with those. If you want to see me continue to do this, let me know in the comment section below. I'm not gonna lie, I'll probably record a bunch of these at once, so it doesn't really matter. But I hope you guys are enjoying. It's your first time stopping by. Don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. And until next time, it's C4 saying, make sure you stay tuned for our 2018 player rankings. Hopefully they're a little bit hotter than some of these. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace out.